fans, wherever you may be. Welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football.
Hey Seahawks fans, welcome back to another edition of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with Keith Myers, here to talk the Carolina Panthers visiting the Seattle Seahawks game on Sunday. Seattle is 7-5. The Panthers are not. This is a game that we should take, but we're here to talk about it and find out if we will take it. So welcome in, Keith.
Yeah. 3 weeks ago or a month ago, I would have said this is a blowout, but the last three games have not generated a lot of confidence. That's the word. Yeah. I'm not looking at Seattle right now and feeling, they're just going to dominate the teams they should, because they haven't. And even last week they won, but they beat a JV team that the Rams sent out there, and didn't look great doing it. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. We were on another podcast here this week, the Field Goals podcast with Dana O'Gorman. And I talked about why I gave them a B- grade overall on the season. Mm-hmm. You were a little bit more optimistic. And I was like, well, I'm bought into this team now. This team's shown me that they're for real. They're a contender. They want to play. They want to get into the playoffs. Let's take them seriously. So if I'm going to take them seriously, I've got to say, okay, I'm going to throw out my earlier expectations before the season. And now my expectations are you're going to be good, and you need to show up every week. And so I'm a little disappointed. And you mentioned the last three games, the running game. That's what it's really all about. Can we defend the run, and can we run the ball when we have the ball on offense? Mm-hmm. And we haven't been able to do either of those things consistently for three straight games. Now, we won that game against the Rams because Geno Smith had a spectacular game and our wide receivers came through big time. And Geno made that last second touchdown throw. If we wouldn't have made that throw, we wouldn't have been able to be successful. We don't win that game. And so that's how close it's been. So I'm anxious to kind of get into this game and see where we're at. Now, the Panthers do have some good players, and they present some challenges in a couple different spots, primarily along their defensive line. They're pretty good on a couple of different positions. And then they've got a defensive back I really like in J.C. Horn that's also really good. But Brian Burns on the edge rusher, and Derek Brown, the defensive tackle they got 7th overall pick in 2020, is the real deal at defensive tackle. Is probably a top 5 defensive tackle in the league. Most people kind of don't know him. He's not, upper echelon, but he's right there. And Brian Burns has, been top 10 edge rusher now since he's been in the league, with tied for 9th in sacks overall since he's been in the league with 35.5, and 17 quarterback hits this year.
Yeah, and overall, like there's some talent on this defensive side. Shaq Thompson, Xavier Woods. There's some names that people will recognize, even if they haven't been a great defensive team overall. The individual talent is there in places, and that's the kind of thing that guys will show up suddenly and play kind of above what you've seen throughout the the season up to this point, and really kind of make an impact. And the Seahawks got to be wary of some of these guys, because they have a chance to come in and just completely change the game plan.
Yeah. It will be interesting to see what happens with our running back room. Haven't heard any word yet as of recording whether or not Walker's practicing or what his status is, and DJ Dallas the same. I understand Homer's trying to come back after an illness and a little knee injury. Looks like he's going to be ready to go. If we can get Dallas back and somewhat healthy for this game, that would be a big help. And then, of course, Ken Walker would be outstanding, but I'm not expecting that.
Both Dallas and Walker did not practice today. So,
And that doesn't
yeah.
surprise me, but it would be, I would be curious to know if they're going to plan on playing Walker, if he's available. I would. I mean, if he says he's ready to go and they're putting pressure on it and he's able to make his cuts, I would play him. But just because now we're into the heart of the season, into December, playoffs are on the line, you got to play your best players. And if he's ready to go at even 80%, I think it's better than sitting him. I don't know. Maybe if you sit him a week, that's fine. But and then in the air, one of the battles I'm going to be looking at too is that CJ Henderson and JC Horn battle against DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. I think that we've got the advantage there because CJ Henderson, while he's been a first-round pick in 2020, he's been abysmal as far as a cornerback in the league is concerned. Not nearly as good as JC Horn. JC Horn's probably a top 6 or 7, maybe 8 corner in the league, and it's going to give DK Metcalf a few problems when they're matched up. But I would expect over the long haul in this game, Seattle is able to score points and take advantage of those matchups.
Yeah, I expect Seattle to put up some points too, because even when the running game hasn't worked for Seattle, they still put up points. Geno and the receivers have done what they needed to do to make that happen. Problem is keeping the defense off the field, sustaining drives. They need the running game for that kind of stuff. And, we'll see, but they'll be able to score some points. They'll be able to get the ball downfield. I'm not that concerned about the offense in this one.
Yeah, I agree. How about like Sam Darnold and Dante Foreman and Chuba Hubbard, their running backs and quarterback Sam Darnold? Their running game scares me a little bit only in the fact that we haven't been able to stop the run for a while, and they have been able to run, in their last 4 games against the Broncos and Falcons, they rushed for a combined 417 yards on 93 attempts. But against the Bengals and the Ravens, they only rushed for 100 yards on 35 attempts combined. So they're just kind of night and day depending on the opponent. But here we are with the Seattle Seahawks, ranked like 26th, 27th in the league against the run. And what we've seen the last 3 weeks, they've got to be able to correct that so that we can get off the field. Otherwise, they're just going to kind of go down the field and convert third downs and make life a little hard for Seattle, especially, we want to be able to have the ball into Geno's hands. And if they've got the ball, if they've got control of the clock, we're just not able to do that.
Yeah. So the second leading rusher on Carolina is Christian McCaffrey, a guy who hasn't been on the team for 6 weeks.
That's funny.
That's funny. And Donta Foreman, is only about 150 yards ahead of him, despite having, 40 more rushing attempts. So, it's interesting that they've been able to run it. You look at their averages. Their averages are pretty good. Even Chuba Hubbard's 4.3 yards per carry, but there's just not a lot of yards here overall through it. The part about their offense, which would scare me if I was a fan of that team, is just they don't have a quarterback. Baker Mayfield was terrible. Phillip Walker wasn't much better. Sam Darnold's now playing. We've seen him fail in a couple different situations. He's completing 58% of his passes for 164 yards per game. When he starts, and he's only got 1 touchdown. So there's just not a lot going on there in their passing game at all.
Yeah, their offense is middling. I mean, they're ranked 25th in points, 29th in yards per play is at 22nd. Their third down conversion rate is almost dead last, and their red zone, their conversion rate is 20th in the league. They're a better rushing team than advertised, but they play from behind a lot. And so they want to put the ball in Sam Darnold's hands. He's only about a 55% completion percentage kind of guy, and that they just don't get it done. So they turn the ball over, they press a little bit, they play one-dimensional football after they fall behind, take that rushing game out of the equation, and that's the formula to beat this team. And I expect Seattle to be able to do that. This is a playoff team. They're 7-5. They have aspirations. This is at home. This is a team that you need to beat, and they do have key advantages both on offense and defense against this team, and that's what I'm expecting. You can go across the board on Seattle's offense. We're basically better at every single category than the Panthers defense. The Panthers defense is ranked 16 to 20 in almost all statistical categories, whereas Seattle's top 10 overall. So I expect them to press that advantage and score points in this game, even if we have a diminished running game. And then on the other side, their offense is just not that efficient. It's just not that good. And so I do expect Seattle to be able to kind of get right in this game. I don't know. I'm not seeing a close game, but anything can happen in the NFL.
Yeah. Their second leading receiver is Christian McCaffrey, who hasn't been on the roster in like 6 weeks.
That's great. But DJ Moore is a challenge. I mean, DJ Moore is going to make some plays for them, but there's really nobody else that you've got to pay attention to.
DJ Moore is a good player. He's having a decent year, even with a lackluster quarterback play. He's got 46 receptions for 605 yards, 4 touchdowns. But the number 2 receiver on the team that's still here, Terrence Marshall, has a total of 18 receptions.
Yeah. And then they've got a couple of guys that I really like out of the slot, actually. Slaviska, Chenault, and then Shai Smith. Both were wide receiver options that we both looked at in the draft and liked at a certain point. But they just really haven't developed. And you're not going to develop those players if you don't have a quarterback. And that's certainly the issue with the Panthers. And that's why they're going to be probably looking strongly at a quarterback in the NFL draft.
But yeah, that's why I'm looking at this. The game plan for Seattle's defense is going to be double team DJ Moore and commit extra bodies to stopping the run.
Yes.
Do those two things, and I think you can shut this defense or this offense down.
So what do you think?
They just don't have a lot else going on.
What do you think about Ryan Neal not being available possibly in this game? That seems like that would be the biggest.
Well, yeah,
concern.
Because it to me, it's a concern, not just because, losing him because he's been good, but also the fact that Josh Jones, who would be his backup, is also on injured reserve now, along with Jamal Adams. And so you look at.
So now we're down to Jonathan Abrams, which we just signed onto the team this last week off waivers.
Yeah, and a guy on from the practice squad. What is Tabor?
Yeah, Tease Tabor.
And
he's more of a free safety type.
I expect Tease Tabor. Well, he is more of a free safety type. I expect if he's on the field, which he probably will be in this game, if Ryan Neal can't play. Hell, he'll probably be on this field even if Ryan Neal does play, because they like to go 3 safeties at times. They'll probably bring Quandre Diggs up. Because
they'll play a 4th corner. They've got Trey Brown available now.
Yep. They did that last year when at the end of the year they brought Quandre Diggs up to play strong safety. And so that might be a thing.
This may be a game where Cody Barton takes like 90% of the snaps too. It is whatever you think about Cody Barton, he's probably the best option Seattle has as far as filling the box and making plays close to the line of scrimmage compared to having 5 defensive backs on the field. I don't know. We need to have 5 defensive backs on the field in this game, but we do need more players in the box. And Cody Barton's, not bad. He's not horrible. He's not quite league average, but he's not dead last either. So
yeah, I think he's about league average, but yeah, I mean, he's definitely not a world beater there. So, but you're right. That might be the best option simply because you've only got to really worry about one receiver, but mainly you have to worry about the running game. And so you're going to bring you're going to want guys up near the line of scrimmage, not extra defensive backs. You want guys that can fill holes and tackle.
Right. That's what I mean. I would certainly start the game that way. Now, to counter that, we may see them come out and try to throw the ball around a little bit. I think that would be a mistake. I think that Darnold's prone to some mistakes. Also, it's an inefficient way to run your offense when you have the kind of offense that they have.
Mm-hmm.
You got to try to take advantage of the skill set that they do have, and that's Dante Foreman and Chuba Hubbard. Those guys are legit. I mean, those guys can run the ball effectively. And I do expect them to kind of press that, but I would think Seattle would do everything that they could to slow down the run in this game. And I'm very curious to see if Seattle can actually do it. It would give me hope, actually, because this is a decent running team. And so it would give me hope into the remainder of the season if they could try to solve that. And they did for 4 weeks. And I'm not exactly sure what's happened in the last 3 weeks. We've talked about some scheme things that have been going on and so forth. I don't quite understand why they would try to go back to what wasn't working originally as a mid-season experiment when they're clearly a good team trying to fight to get into the playoffs. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know.
Yeah. On the other side of the ball, there is one thing that concerns me a little bit, and that's going to be Brian Burns coming off the edge. Guy's already got 10 sacks this year. The Seahawks have had some big games against them by elite pass rushers. And, this looks like a possibility for another one. Hopefully they don't just leave the rookies on an island and they give him some help from time to time, but he has a chance to really make things hard on Geno. Other than that, I don't see. Honestly, I just don't see that much there for them.
Yeah, that player, and scheme-wise, they like to blitz. So they'll blitz. They lead the league in blitz percentage at between 35 and 40% of the time. And so I expect them to blitz. I expect them to stunt. I think that our interior offensive line is going to be challenged in this game, not necessarily by Derek Brown, although that's possible, especially if they isolate him and decide to double Brian Burns. But if they stunt Brian, work him outside in, that could also be something to watch. And I'm not exactly sure what to expect there because our offensive line has been kind of, especially down the stretch. Our offensive tackles have struggled a little bit, especially against some speed rushers and late in games, wearing down a little bit. Now, some of that may have been illness attributed to this last week and a half or so. Illness has been kind of going around in that locker room. I know Abe Lucas was sick prior to that last game, and we saw him kind of get taken advantage of a little bit there. So that'll be definitely something to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if the Seahawks are struggling to get the ball moving on the ground, I hope we see maybe some Jake Curran come in and at right guard and just give him some more road grading that can happen there.
He's been a healthy scratch. So, I mean, if he's a healthy scratch going into this game, that's not even an option. So I don't even – but
there's a lot of guys that are out with injuries, so the number of healthy scratches should be less. I get it. Like, they've got Haynes that can play the guard spots. They need a backup center, and Forsyth plays both tackle spots, so he can be the backup tackle on game day. But, Curran offers you the highest ceiling in terms of play out of that group, even if he's limited to just right tackle and right guard.
But the coaching staff, and Andy Dickerson's a great coach, and you know that. He's a great position coach. He has not convinced Andy Dickerson that he's beaten out Haynes for that guard spot if he is in fact an interior blocker. And the team doesn't view him that way, apparently.
Well, he'll never beat Haynes out for the left guard spot because he doesn't practice there. He doesn't play there. He's a right side only, so far with this team. And that's why Haynes is always active and Curran's not, is that it gives them, Haynes gives them more versatility because he can play either side. So if either guard goes down, he can slide in. Where
if they decide to keep another lineman on the active roster on game day, what player would you sacrifice to do that? Like an LJ Collier, something like that?
not against our running team.
Defensive back? Like
Maybe, I don't know, maybe one of the,
like,
it's hard to say. I was thinking
Justin Coleman.
Yeah, Justin Coleman's a guy that he doesn't really play anymore.
And he wouldn't play in this game.
Probably. They're not going to go with 6 defensive backs a lot, and even if they do, they've got Trey Brown back and ready to play. So I think getting Justin Coleman will have a hard time getting on the field, and so getting an extra offensive lineman on there, one that they can sub in and get the running game going if they have to, would be useful. It would be useful. More useful than a defensive back that's not going to play when you're playing a team that runs the ball and can't throw it.
I would like to see this before the end of the season to see if we're right. Because if he comes in and he plays well and they start interior blocking really well, we're able to run through the tackles, we're pushing piles, and Jake Curran's in there and he's instrumental in that. I would like to see some vindication for you and I, because we've been talking about it for like 10 weeks.
We've seen it once. We saw it once. He came in for about a half because of some injuries, and it looked really ugly for the first like 3 or 4 plays because he really struggled. But once he got going, once he got kind of warmed up and in there, it looked really good. But we've only seen it for 1 half. And so at some point, it's got to happen.
So I'm going to ask you this question and then we can get to some predictions. What do we need to do on the other side of the ball to defend the run? Like in this game?
Guys got to do their job more than anything. We can't have Bruce Irvin crashing inside when the run's going outside. He's got to stay outside, set the edge, do his job. He did that really well when the defense was playing well. And the last couple of weeks, he's been kind of freelancing, and it has bit the team pretty hard. Taylor does the same thing, and it's also been a problem. They've got to go through and just fill their lanes like they're supposed to. And I want to see our front 3 attack. No more of this 2-gapping stuff. It's not working. If they're going to take people and just go straight at our middle linebackers to block them and not even try to double team up front, then get into a gap and attack. Get upfield, make the running back moves, out of his lane before he even gets to the line of scrimmage. That's the type of stuff that we were seeing there for a bit, and now we're not seeing anymore.
So apparently in this Rams game, they had been leaving the C gap unoccupied, and the C gap is in between the tackle and the tight end.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of a Bruce Irvin spot typically, which means Bruce has been sliding in a little bit and leaving that outside edge. So anyway, what they did is they solved that after like 3 or 4, not 3 or 4 series, but 3 or 4 run plays. They knew this was a problem, and they solved that, because I think what that was requiring was a guy like Tariq Woolen to come up and fill that, mm-hmm. or a guy that's normally playing back, safety. And so it was allowing people to get 4 or 5 yards before they were even getting touched. And so I think some of this is scheme stuff too, where they're just kind of experimenting, or they're trying to put players in a position to be successful, but it's not really working, and they're having some communication issues. And I expect more out of this coaching staff. Clint Hurt's been on the staff for a while now. He's a defensive coordinator, but he's been in this system before. You've got Sean Desai, Carl Scott. Those guys are really smart. Plus, Pete Carroll. And so I'm not exactly sure, because of that they continue to kind of try to feel this thing out. It must just be that we just don't have the personnel to fit what they really want to do. And so they're just having to kind of,
that is the case, because what they really want to do is the 2-gap up front, where the front 3 eat blocks and, kind of stack players on the interior two gap so they can get to the gap on either side of them, and leave our linebackers to attack. But the guys aren't doing it. They're Shelby Harris and Quentin Jefferson. Those guys are guys that knife into gaps themselves. They're not built for two gapping. And so they don't have the personnel that they to do what they want to do. But what they need to do is what their personnel does best. Going back to two gapping is just, It's been a mistake and it hasn't worked.
Yes, agree. Okay. We're gonna get out of here. So let's have a little bit of a prediction thing. What are you feeling?
I'm feeling like this game kind of is a bit of a slog first half, but then Seattle just pulls away in the second half. That Carolina just can't keep up once Seattle gets their offense going. I've got the Seahawks winning this one 27-16.
Interesting. Yeah, I've got this thing at like 27-14. Same sort of deal. But I in fact, we could probably run away with this thing. And if that happens, we score into the 30s and they're still scoring, 14, 17 points, something like that. I don't see them scoring more than 20. So that would be a real surprise to me. I think Seattle's has a hard time not scoring at least 20. They're just built to score points. And so I think that you'll see Seattle pull away. Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
And they win this thing 27-33, 34 to 14, 17, something like that. Yep.
Wow. So you got a blowout on here.
Yeah. I see a 2-score game here. I really do. I think that we're just a better team. We're a better team. And I think that it's time. It's now, mid-December. It's time to start winning games and really playing well and getting this thing together and giving ourselves a chance to get to the playoffs and win. You've got to win games like this because you've got two really hard games coming up. San Francisco 49ers and Kansas City Chiefs are going to be extremely difficult to win. They're not even toss-up games. Those are games that are going to be heavily favored by those other teams. Mm-hmm. And so you've got to get every game that you're supposed to win down the stretch. And this is one of them.
True story.
All right, we're out of here. Go enjoy the game. Enjoy the game, everyone. Have a great time. We'll see you back here afterwards for a recap show. So make sure you look for us right after the game. Probably within, an hour or so, we'll post that. And we might even do it live. I don't know. We haven't talked about it yet, but we'll figure it out. You can find Keith on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter in the show. You can find us on your favorite podcast platform. Just look us up, Seahawks Playbook Podcast. And YouTube. We're on YouTube. We have our own channel. We're on 3 times a week. If you can hit that subscribe button, that would really help. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NWSeahawk. Keith is at Myers NFL. And the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.